This is so funny because this irks me. There's like this
Is
like
this a complaint?
genuine.
Are you venting?
Well, it's an example of complaining.
That's a great way.
Hey,
I'm not going to
you haven't-
complain.
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
give
give you an example of a possible
An
complaint
example of
that
how
if I
I
were
complain.
to complain,
I'm not gonna. Yeah, if I were to.
This is the Roundabout Podcast. We're your hosts. I'm John.
And I'm Jeremy, and today we are going to talk about complaining. What do you find yourself complaining about? What do you do to break this bad habit of complaining? Is complaining sometimes justified? We're going to talk about these things today and more on this episode of the Roundabout Podcast. All right, so here we go again, man.
Yeah, we're already up to 5 episodes.
Episode 5.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
This is our first episode that we've taken a nap before we started.
We just took a nap.
And I got to tell you, I'm sold. I wasn't convinced that a 20-minute nap would do anything for me, and it actually did.
Yep. I was telling you earlier, I am almost daily I take a 20-minute nap actually.
Really?
Yep. Sundays after church I might take a little extra snooze, like whatever. But even then it's probably still I don't want to be groggy, so I just do 20 just to like refresh myself. And
see, I was under the belief that it's opposite. I'm groggy if I take a short nap. For me, if I'm going to take a nap, I'm setting aside an hour and a half. And many of you listening right now are like, who's got that time to do that? But when I take a nap, usually I take naps on weekends, not weekdays. But man, nothing beats a good nap. And for me, 20 minutes just doesn't really do it. But I will say today, right before this episode, we took a 20-minute nap. And I do actually feel pretty good. I find sometimes though, when I take a nap, I don't know about you, but like if you go too long, sometimes you wake up and you're like just real groggy and cranky. And
yep. Well, and that's one of the reasons why I was telling Crystal when we were talking about that on the way back, like I don't want to hit the snooze button because I know I'm just going to be like, oh, I just want to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Why do we get cranky after a nap sometimes?
Well,
why is that? Where you're just irritable and like
it's just you just want to be comfortable. You just and that actually leads into it's today what we're talking about with complaining and just that why do we get cranky? Why do we complain about stuff? And I think it's just like we just want to be comfortable and we want everything to just be about us and whatever. It's something to think about, even just why do we complain in the first place, Yeah,
that's a good one, because I find myself often complaining about things where I got to kind of put myself in check and be like, "What, John? Get out of this funk here."
What did you say? What did you say when we said that we were going to talk about this as an episode with Crystal?
Yes, I told Crystal, I go, because she always claims that I'm always complaining about stuff, and she complains too, but I call it venting. Anyhow, today I was like, yeah, we're one of the topics, and then right before I said it, I'm like, I don't even want to say it because I know you're gonna. So she's sitting there and she's like, no, tell me seriously, what's the topic? And I go, all right, here's the deal. If I tell you what this topic is, you have to promise me you don't make any digs or say anything about it when Jeremy's here, and start making fun of me and stuff. And I was actually being joking when I said this too. But anyhow, so she's like, well, what's the subject? Now, for those of you that are listening that know my wife, you might crack up over this because she is very soft-spoken. She's not very, talkative, and certainly would never do anything like this venture that we're doing. But anyhow, I said to her, I go, yeah, the topic we're going to hit on today is complaining. She lit up right away. She goes, can I be a guest?
Which is like, you would never, ever, ever see Crystal volunteer.
Yeah, and I know what she meant by that. I know by her being a guest was, I'm going to put you on blast, John.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I find myself complaining a lot. It can be a habit. It's a habit forming thing that I'm working on. I think we all go there at times in our life. But yeah, complaining is just one of those things where it's weird because on one sense you think you're like getting it off your shoulders or you're getting some satisfaction out of it, and it's almost like you sink lower into it, And
oh, yeah. Definitely. It is like an addiction, like anything else. Like it feels good, and then when you complain, it's almost like, what do they say about when you smile or you laugh, how that can be contagious.
Yeah.
I feel like complaining is the
big time.
same thing.
I agree.
And
you could almost do an experiment. You could almost be like, let's just go into a room and start complaining and see how many people jump in with, you're right. This,
And you know what? And the thing is like I'm as guilty of it as anybody else, because if you're at work or you're at whatever the situation is, it's so easy. It is so easy for us to find things that
are wrong.
Yeah.
Or how we feel we're being wrong.
Is wrong. Yeah.
But you bring up a very good point, is that the workplace is probably one of the top breeding grounds of complaining and feeling slighted,
What I feel, why it's, one of the reasons it's so easy to complain is because maybe not 100% of the time, but I'd say 99% of the time, there's a root of truth. There is a reason why you're complaining, and it's a legitimate reason of why,
Yes and no.
Yeah, right.
It's not always legitimate. But
sometimes it's not. Yeah, sometimes we think it's just the way we think.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's sort of like somewhere in that middle ground where okay, so and so didn't do X, Y, or Z that they were supposed to do. Okay, maybe there's a legitimate like gripe there a little bit, but so what? So you could just make the best of it and have a positive attitude and just go on your way, or you can complain about it.
Keep complaining.
Yeah.
Well, I joked about it, but this is an honest question. What do you think, or should I say, do you think there's a difference between complaining and venting? I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a difference.
Well, I think venting is more of a get it off the shoulders. Hey, I just want to throw this out there, but I'm ready to move on sort of thing. Versus complaining to me is more like I'm just going to sulk on this and,
But you know what? So I've used the phrase. So I am 100% like, this conversation I think is like it's almost like self-therapeutic for us because we both can. I would like to think I'm not so much of a complainer, but when I think about it, I am. I complain just as much as anybody else, and so this is good because we're sort of self-assessment here. So I've used.
Are you actually complaining about yourself being a complainer? Right
Yeah,
now?
I am.
Wow.
I can't stand it. The phrase like I just got to vent. I
just got to complain.
Sometimes is just a
I guess,
out.
But we're social beings, right? It's nice. You get that feeling when somebody else can relate to what you're going through. And I think that's what kind of is the driving force with complaining, is that you feel you're wrong, whether it's justified or not. You feel you're wrong, and you need somebody else to validate that and go, yeah, you're right. And either validate just your specific situation, or them chime in and go, yeah, you're right. They do it to me too. So there's.
Well, let's just today, you and I were talking about a situation, and we won't give any details of it, but we were talking about a situation, and I am like, I'm right on the same page with you, where I agree with the gripe that's there, and it's funny though, because as soon as you mention the
what was that? Was it
that was my throat just made like I just I just croaked, I think.
Throat. It's like a throat fart.
These awesome things. This is one of these are the things that we're gonna be like. Oh, we are so professional.
Well, I just want to make sure that you get the credit for that one. Because I think there was
I took a drink of something, and I think it's like
well, I think the second episode, like every other word out of my mouth, there was, and I just want you to be able to take credit on some of that, similar to our notorious snoring debate that goes on during our hiking trips, which we'll get into at one point.
That's for sure. But so this, situations where you agree with the person's complaint, that's the worst. That's like adding fuel to fire because now you've got a buddy who is like on your team, like a cheerleader for your complaining, and like and with like the venting thing and everything. I think we know, whether we want to admit it or not, we know when we're complaining. We know when we're like, and sometimes, like, I've noticed this. Call it conviction from the Lord or whatever you want to call it. But there's been moments where I've been like venting, or telling somebody about a situation, and I just recognize like I'm whining. I'm whining, I'm complaining, like I'm just gonna stop because
those are two words that nobody ever likes to like admit they're doing, right?
Nope.
You don't want to say you're whining. You don't want to say you're complaining.
I hate whining.
Yeah, I do too. But you never want to admit that you're partaking in that.
Right.
It always does default to venting.
Yep.
Then it's justified. Then it's not complaining. But yeah, so there is some gray area there where they both are the same thing. But my thought is like venting is more like, hey, I gotta get this up. What are your thoughts? Because sometimes you might not necessarily feel you're wronged, but you need somebody else to make that call for you. You know, so I might tell you a situation. I just think of the workplace. This is like the perfect setting for all these types of things. But could be anywhere, but workplace is probably the most common. But you know, you just go in and you bring something up, and all you need, like you said, is a cheerleader to go, no, man, you need to go in there and say something. That was the way they did that to you, or whatever, you know?
Yeah,
and then
you're
right.
right.
And you just think about, and I guess this is some encouragement to the listeners too, and even myself, is that when somebody comes to you and whine, try to get in the habit of how can I get this guy off of that? Rather than throw the gasoline on the fire, how do I, you know, a real easy one is, yeah, but you know what? Don't even sweat it, man. You know, you can pull one of those, but you know, a lot of times if you can just shift somebody out of that, because if you really think about it, what does complaining really get you?
Nothing.
I mean,
nothing.
Yeah, and it doesn't really satisfy anything
Nope.
in the long run, you know.
Now I want to be completely honest about this. So I just said nothing. Complaining doesn't get you anything, but if you complain to the right person, and I'm not saying this is a good thing to do.
No.
But I'm saying if you complain to the right person, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing.
I get that, yeah.
There are people who are notorious complainers and they get their way because it gets to the point where people just go, just give so-and-so what they want.
Well, it's like a little kid screaming until they get their
just
candy or popsicle or something.
Just shut them up. I don't want to hear them whining anymore. And the thing is that gets to the point where it almost becomes enablement, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Because now this person knows that if they complain, they're going to get what they want. And that's something that we see it. And sometimes I think that's our desire, even if we don't admit it or consciously know it. Like we want to get our way when we complain. But like you said, we should be the ones who, in our own life, if we notice ourselves complaining or the urge to complain about something, we should be the ones that say like, no, like, what do I have to be thankful for?
Exactly.
What do I have?
That's helpful to me.
Or even just, how about this? Okay, I have a complaint. It's a legitimate complaint. Something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, or Z has to be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
This situation or this problem. How about what can I do to rectify the situation? Like sometimes we just want to complain and not do anything about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a tendency that so many of us like it's easy to complain. It's cheap. It's cheap to, talk's cheap,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So what can you do about it?
Yeah, you're right. It's taking action and the right action too, right? Retaliation isn't the right action.
Right.
Confrontation, as tough as it can be a very good thing. And oftentimes it is the best solution. Confronting it head on, honestly,
right,
respectfully, But yeah, complaining's an interesting one. And I had this thought too. I'm like, are people more inclined to, or how do I even articulate this? I'm thinking like, is it easier to get people in a complain mode? As I said, like it'd be fun to do an experiment, just go into a room and complain and just see how many people kind of jump on that bus with you. Do you get the same results if you go in there with the other way around? Go in there with encouragement and, hey, did you hear the good thing that happened to me? Are you going to get a lot of people? I mean, that's just something to consider, right? Who do you want to be known as? The person that comes in and brings everybody down in a room, or do you want to be the guy that comes in and is uplifting?
Changes the atmosphere.
Yeah. And again, I know I keep saying work, but that is such a big one because that's where we do, especially people of our age, that's where we spend a good chunk of our life is working and in the workforce. And there's no better setting than the workplace for people to feel like they were slighted or they're not getting a fair shake on things, and
well, anytime you throw different personalities and different cultures, I'm going to say cultures, not like ethnic cultures, but just home cultures or family cultures, or however you want to say it. You throw these personalities, you throw these habits, you throw these things, you mash them into one place and say, okay, we all now have this unified purpose, in whatever it is, serving the company or whatever. And you want all of those different people and personalities and stuff to work together. There's going to be some grading sometimes, and there's going to be some things where, well, so-and-so does it this way, and that's just not the right way to do it, like, oh, that's just not right, and, but going back to that, it's one of those things where, like you said, be the person that changes it and says like, oh, what can we, either how can we fix it, or if it's not even really a problem, sometimes we create problems in our head that aren't really problems. And, we can be the one that says, well, okay, well, how can we benefit from this? How can we see this as a strength? Where can we apply this person or this situation or whatever to where it becomes now a benefit? This, we're talking about work and stuff, but what about home life? Like there's, whether it's just a husband and wife or a family of 10, whatever, there's going to be times where so-and-so does this, okay. This is, I'm going to blast my kids right now. One of the things that gets me is when I fill the water filter. Okay. This is so funny because this irks me. There's like this like
a complaint. Are you venting?
Well, it's an example of complaining.
That's a great way. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to give you an example of a possible complaint that if I were to complain,
I'm not going to complain, but if I were to complain,
this is how it would go.
I might bring up my children not refilling the water filter.
Oh boy!
Like I fill the water filter and then I come back later because it takes a little bit for we got like a Berkey water filter that actually we got from you guys quite a while ago. Yeah. And it's not like you don't just pour the water through and then get water immediately if it's empty.
Yeah, it's gotta sit,
you got to wait for it to drip through the filter. Well, this is
when you hit that tap and it's empty.
It's like making me twitch right now, like where I pour water in it and I'm like, okay, I'm going to come get some water in a little while.
I'm thirsty.
Come back and it's empty again. Like they've emptied it. I emptied it. And the thing that gets me is, this is so funny. Am I complaining now? I don't know.
Well, this is funny though, because I'm just picturing, I can't remember how that thing, but it had one of those like toggle type.
Yeah.
It's so you toggle it and it's just bone dry.
Nothing. Well, and this is what gets me is, so I get that like sometimes it's going to be like bone dry. Somebody finished it. But then you take off the top and you see, oh, cool, somebody just filled it fine.
Yeah, okay.
They finished it, but now they filled it.
But
no big deal. When you do this for water and nothing comes out, and then you take the top off and it's not filled, and you're like, somebody came over with their water bottle or whatever it was, took the last of the water to the point where no more water was coming out. And then they're like, we'll turn that off, and then they just walked away.
Guess there's no water.
Like,
dude, that's why you got to get one of those cameras. You can get them cheap
to see who it was.
Oh, if that's the thing that irks you, get I highly recommend to get that camera, because then you can go to it and see the person that goes and doesn't work, walk away, and then you ground them for a month.
So this is the thing, is that is it still going to irk me if it happens? It's probably still going to bother me.
But that's a natural. I don't want to say complaint, but it's a natural thing to be frustrated with, because it's consideration.
Right. It's lack of consideration. Like your dog.
Yeah.
Just the most inconsiderate dog.
My dad called my dog inconsiderate one time. True story.
Well, but it is a lack of consideration, but I can let it ruin my afternoon because the water wasn't filled.
Put a fist through the wall.
Or
I want my water.
Or I could just grab the pitcher, fill it up, dump some more water in it, and that's...
Here's what I recommend you do from here on out if this ever happens again. I'm thinking on the top of my head on this. Well, first off, if you had a camera and you could determine exactly who it was, let's say it was Max, go fill up a pitcher of water and go dump it over his head.
Okay.
That'll teach him.
Fill the water filter.
This is going to happen each time you don't do that.
Yep.
Or tell the kids, if I ever come up to this thing and it's empty, make them have something that's in place that... Well, is there something in place? Or do you just walk around and complain about it?
Just walk around and complain about it. Oh, yeah.
But no, and let me guess, nobody...
Oh yeah,
takes credit.
Who took?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
my.
yeah,
That
that's
is
right
what
of
really
me.
gets me. It's like, who took the last of the water and
Not
didn't
me.
fill it? No, I
Yeah,
didn't. Nobody. So you're telling me
It evaporated.
we just turned this episode about how to avoid complaining into an episode of complaining.
We'll bring it full circle.
But like,
It evaporated.
Seriously though, who took the last of the water? Nobody. So you're telling me nobody emptied this water?
What if it was you? What? Think about it. You actually could have been the last person. Let's say you got drink, and it just so happened there was just enough to fill the cup you had. You ever think about that one?
It slows.
Okay,
the trickle
so there's no
slows.
possibility.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
I just thought, maybe.
I think you're talking like water.
Here's
filter
another one:
inception.
toilet paper.
No, who?
Yeah,
somebody takes the last of it.
Empty thing sitting there.
Well, so you said, have we done anything to fix the situation, or do we just complain? They do. Now it's like, okay, fill the water when you're doing the dishes or whatever. Like there's times, but with all of this, the thing is like there are steps that you can take for most problems to prevent a situation that's going to cause you to complain. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, if I feel that attitude is rising up in me, that I want to complain about something, I know that I just need to check myself. And sometimes it's just as simple as, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut right now.
That's probably one of the best solutions to that. And that's tough. That's discipline.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you really think about it too, in the bigger picture of things, is it really the end of the world that you can't go without fresh filtered water for, a couple minutes here?
John, I can't believe you just said that.
No, but we talk about that though. It's like all the amenities we have and luxuries.
Oh, yeah.
That comedian you were talking about, I still chuckle at the story, and I can't remember the whole thing, but where he basically gets on an airplane and they introduced a new technology, like, hey, for your convenience, we have whatever.
Louis C.K., who is not a comedian that I would recommend, but there was a clip that I saw years ago of him on David Letterman or Conan or something like that. And he says this, how quickly the world owes you something, whatever. And he's just talking about how he opens up this whole bit, and we won't go through the whole spiel, but he opens up this bit talking about how everything is awesome and no one's happy. He says everything is amazing now and no one's happy. And he just goes through how nice we have it, but how we find things to complain about.
Yeah.
What the one thing he's talking about, flying in an airplane, and he goes, you're sitting in a chair in the sky. You should just be like, wow.
Yeah.
But he says like, internet on the airplane, and he gives this bit about the guy who didn't even know it existed 10 minutes ago. But then when they're like, oh yeah, you can use your laptops, but then they're like, oh, the internet's not working, and he goes,
this is bull.
Yeah. He's like, how quickly the world owes him something for something he didn't even know existed 10 minutes ago.
I believe there's people that actually enjoy complaining.
Oh yeah,
they just, like you said, I think
misery loves
said,
company.
Yeah, or like they're kind of addicted to it. Like they just love being in that mode of that they've got screwed somehow.
Oh yeah,
and that's weird. I mean, if I'm honest with myself, I guarantee there's been times in my life where when I complained, I did enjoy some of the sympathy I maybe got from it.
Sure.
Or just the validation, maybe not necessarily sympathy, but somebody else going, yeah, that's wrong. They shouldn't have did that or whatever, and that can be addicting. But I will say that I really believe the opposite is true too. The being the light and being encouraging to people can be very, very addicting,
right?
And very just uplifting.
Well, that is so. One of the things I said is like sometimes we just need to keep our mouth shut in general. Like if we feel that complaining is rising up. And that's just that's just some of the self-discipline of just like, I'm not going to complain. But there are things where there are so many things in life where it's like, okay, here's the bad side, or here's the negative side of things. Here's the positive side of things. And so often we become content with like, I'm just not going to do the negative. Whereas if we would just take the full step over into the positive realm of things, we're that much farther away from falling into the trap of that negative thing. So complaining in this situation, we could just keep our mouth shut. But sometimes that's still many times, not just sometimes, many times that's still going to keep that like that deep seated
Yeah.
like anger,
Which
or
isn't healthy
bitterness,
either,
or
yeah.
whatever. And sometimes that just bottles up. Whereas if we would say like, you know what, I could complain about this. I absolutely could, and I'd be justified in complaining about it to some extent. You know, like if it's a legitimate situation, I'd be justified in complaining about it. But instead of complaining, I'm going to think about all of the things that I can be thankful for all of the blessings in my
and
life.
I guarantee
all of the positive
every
things.
single one of us could find something, right? I mean, just the air that you breathe is one, you know, and not to sound cheesy, but it's so true. It's very helpful because I agree with you, Jeremy. I've had many situations too where I'm like, I just take a step back and I go, first off, what I'm complaining about really isn't even that important,
right?
And sometimes our complaining is more deeply rooted in something else too. You could be complaining about something that isn't even really related to what the root problem is too. You may have said something about that a little bit ago, but that living in that negative energy and negative mindset is very toxic to your body. I know I can't quote any studies, but I've heard of studies where it has a physical effect on people.
Absolutely. Stress. I don't know if we mentioned it on the episode when Mo was here or not, but cortisol is it a hormone or is it it's something that your body produces when it's under stress. And cortisol slows your metabolism. It causes it causes your body to go haywire. And so there is the physiological things that can happen in your system. So and I'm sure it probably affects your immunities. We were just talking about it. John thought he was sick. I told him he's not sick, but it was a stressed a week or whatever, But these things, like, your body can do crazy things, And you were saying, if we're getting ready to complain, or if we're thinking about, or if we have been complaining and just thinking about those blessings, I don't know, just how many times it's happened. Like, there's been multiple times where at our work, we can have some stressful mornings, like chaotic mornings sometimes. Just
You're complaining again.
Well, no, but
this is another example.
This is a good example of just nipping it in the bud, because there's been mornings where it's so chaotic, it's so stressful, grumbling, just feeling sorry for myself. And multiple times, and I truly believe this is like the Lord. And this is, you said not to sound cheesy before. This is going to sound cheesy a little bit, but it's probably happened 3 times, maybe 4 times. We, our shop where we load up the guys and we're doing all this stuff in the mornings, the doors, the back overhead doors, and the service door and stuff like that, it faces east, and we're there early in the morning. And it's happened multiple times where I'm having a rough morning. It's stressful. We're getting these guys out. We're getting loaded. Things aren't going quite right, whatever. And I go outside, and it's just like the most beautiful sunrise in the east. And I know, and I truly believe, like, the Lord has used that to just say, like, slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down. You have so much to be thankful for.
Yes.
And it's like the beauty of a sunrise. And we've been in nature, out, on backpacking trips or whatever together, where you just you're in awe at creation. And I know for a fact that the Lord's used these just to say, like what you're going through, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're okay. It's like I tell my kids sometimes, like, if they're crying about something or complaining about something, like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And sometimes,
there's blood all over the floor, but it's not a big deal.
So sometimes God just needs to say to us, like, look, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, there are many worse, much more worse things that you could be going through than this, And so sometimes it's just a check of, like, you're fine.
Well, one of the motivators for me that I use to keep myself in check and complaining, and again, I'm not saying I never complain. We all do. I think to myself, like, man, first off, I don't, after I'm done with my complaining, I'm like embarrassed by it almost, like, man, I was
ashamed.
kind of ashamed, where I've gone to people and said, hey, man, I'm really sorry if I've just been complaining. I just, but so I try to, as a motivator, I try to say, do I want to be that guy?
Right.
I don't want to be that person, man. I want to be the person that people go, man, that guy lights up a room, or
He's
that guy
always upbeat.
Yeah,
He's
he gets
smiling. He's
man, and believe it or not, those are the types of people that complainers. Now, the people that, when I say complainers, as I said, there are some people that just enjoy living in that, and they just, that's their comfort. They want to be in that. But the people that are going through some tough times, rather than seeking out other people to, as I said earlier, validate they'll seek people like you or me out that are assuming that we're working on trying to be more positive and everything. They'll seek that type of person out to also dig themselves out of that funk too. So,
sure.
Does that make sense?
Or they'll avoid it like the plague.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. Either they want somebody that is going to like snap me out of this, get me out of this funk that I'm in, or they want to be in it so bad that they avoid those.
You will actually get them more mad with your positive energy.
Yes.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I knew a person like that just they're like, it's not always you're like, well, what about this? What you try to kind of like
offer it
I hate
out.
to use the word coach, but you're trying to kind of coach them into like a different way of thinking, and they're fighting it. They're hanging on so hard that they like are angry at you for like thinking like the world's not like that. Okay. Like you can't always just, find a positive way out of the situation, whatever. It's like, well, you're not even looking for a way out of the situation. You just want to stay in that, negativity. So it is. And I guarantee you, if anytime that you or I or any of the listeners are in a situation where they want to complain, and if they are able to, like, self-aware sounds like such an AI thing, like artificial intelligence become self-aware. But if we're more self-aware of like, we'll just for you or I, we would say like if the Holy Spirit convicts us of something like that, but some people it's like their conscience or whatever if they're saying that, but there's something in mankind in general that like you're gonna recognize sometimes those like little pokes in your mind or your heart, whatever, where like, what are you doing? So if we're more self-aware of those moments where we like recognize, oh man, I'm about to complain, or I am complaining, and we just stop and take that, I guarantee you that we'll be happier, have more joy in general.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
Well, one of the things, too, with complaining is it quickly spirals into gossip and gossiping. Because there's always somebody that's at fault for why you're in the predicament or what you're complaining about.
And that same
like you said, whether it's a spousal thing, like my wife didn't do it, or, hey, so-and-so at work didn't do this. There's always somebody at fault. So that spirals into a gossip thing. And I don't know about you, but I definitely don't want to be known as a gossip.
No.
I've been sucked into it many times. And many times I've also been the leader in it, and I'm ashamed about that. That doesn't sit well with me. I don't like to be that person. But man, I'm gonna say 90% of the time, complaining turns into gossip, and then because you have that in your heart, that negativity and that anger, or hatred, whatever it may be, maybe all of them, maybe a couple of those things, you will most often likely say something that you will regret. You're just saying it out of just out of your feelings or out of your emotions or whatever. But yeah, the gossip element to complaining is really the thing that can get...
and it's many times that same excuse of venting can be used to gossiping and complaining definitely can go hand in hand. And the thing I don't even remember where I just heard this. I just heard somebody say this. But they said if you allow somebody to gossip to you, or you join into that gossip with them, you better believe that as soon as you're out of their presence, they're going to be gossiping just as much about you too.
Exactly.
It's like it's a sad thing. So in general, I think that there's just an attitude of do I want to live in like the funk? And there are guys and women too who have become cranky, grumpy old men,
bitter,
and women, and bitter and angry in general because they chose throughout their life to just give in to that
and live in that
attitude of complaining over and over. Well, and this was something else that I wanted to touch on with this was, I heard it said once, and so this is another classic one, complaining about the weather. Okay. It's an easy thing to complain about because again, it's that comfort. If it's raining or it's too cold for me or it's too hot for me or it's too humid or it's too whatever, sometimes it's like, well, if it's not 68 degrees with a nice
little gentle
cool
breeze,
then everybody's can complain about it. But whether it's the weather or whatever other situation you find yourself in life, somebody once said, if you're complaining, you're not just complaining like to the air, to the wind. You're complaining to what situations God has allowed and put into your life,
Yeah.
And so these are things where, again, if we have the mindset of like, what can I do to improve the situation? What can I do to be a light in the situation, to be that joy to that person who's complaining or to the problem that's going on? How can I fix it? How can I be a benefit at work to my employer or to the fellow employees that I'm with? How can I be somebody who brings resolution or whatever it is, as opposed to just somebody who just wants to complain about it and basically like in complaining, we're not recognizing all of the possibilities and opportunities that we have. There are so many opportunities that we have to bring a positive change,
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you said it earlier too. It's like, take action on it. Take positive action on it. Whether it's confronting the individual that you feel did you wrong, whether, again, with work, people often complain about their bosses and stuff. Well, if it's really that bad at the end of the day, why are you working there? You have a choice, so look at those choices in front of you. And make a sound decision, and on top of it, just look at where you might have been kind of a player in the mess of it. You're not always, it's not always just bad things happen to you. It could be choices you made, people you're associating yourself with, just your attitude. And, you just got to try to keep that in check as best you can, and I don't know.
It's or just take a 20-minute nap. Bring it full circle to the beginning.
Yeah, a nap does the
Take
body wonders.
Sometimes, when a baby's cranky, sometimes their diaper's clean. They've been fed. They've been held. All they need, everything else is done, but they just need a nap. And sometimes just take a nap, and then maybe they'll complain a little less.
Exactly.
So I think a little bit of a shorter episode today, but that's okay.
It's fun.
So just an encouragement to you guys. In all of this,
stop whining.
Stop whining. Stop it. Stop whining. It's easy to whine and complain, but you will be so much happier if you just take a second to recognize it for what it is
and appreciate all the awesome blessings God has given you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us again, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Roundabout Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Also, feel free to join us on the Roundabout Podcast community group on Facebook, where you can ask questions, submit ideas for future episodes, and connect with other listeners. See you next time.